All right, good morning, everyone. It's 9:05. We're going to go ahead and get rolling. Welcome to Los Angeles. Welcome to University of Southern California. It's so exciting to be here. We were here 6 years ago before COVID. It feels like a million years ago, but we're happy to be back. My name is James Burk. I'm the executive director of the Mars Society. I'll be introducing Robert. I just want to have a few housekeeping notes. We have 4 breakout rooms this afternoon. They're all on this floor. And uh, we have, the campus at your disposal. There's lots of places to eat nearby. If you need anything while you're here, just ask one of our awesome volunteers and be sure to thank them as well for all their hard work. This has been a fantastic year, I think, in a lot of ways for the Mars movement. We'll get into that. As you can see from our poster, Mars, the time is now. We picked that theme for this conference deliberately. This is a huge opportunity. I mean, I think about the symbol in Chinese for crisis is the same as opportunity. I think a lot of us can feel that this year. But anyway, I'm going to go ahead and bring on Robert Zubrin. He's our founder and president of the Mars Society, and he is a world-renowned Mars expert, author of several books, the most recent being The New World on Mars, how we can create a new adventure economy on the Mars civilization someday. And we're going to try to do that today with the Mars Technology Institute as well. We'll talk about that a little bit later. But I'll go ahead and welcome up Robert Zubrin.
So, yeah, as Jim said, this is a moment of crisis and opportunity, although I have to say that the crisis part is looming a lot bigger right now. Okay, so yeah, it's a good news, bad news situation. Okay, the bad news is that the NASA space science program is under severe attack. Severe. This is not a small attack. The NASA budget is being cut by about $6 billion overall, and $4 billion of that is going to the quarter of NASA that is the space science program. This is the part of NASA that does the Mars rovers and orbiters and the probes to Jupiter and the New Horizons to Pluto and Hubble and Webb and the other space telescopes and all the Earth observation satellites as well. Okay, it is the part of NASA that since Apollo has been responsible for at least 90% of all NASA's real accomplishments. Okay, it is the purpose-driven part of NASA. So they're cutting $6 billion from NASA, and $4 billion of that is being directed at the best part of NASA, the very best part that makes it worthwhile. So this is really bad. Now, look, they're talking a big game. Oh, we're going to the moon. Then we're going to go to Mars. So don't worry about this. We had a similar situation in 2005. Okay, and in many respects, this was one of the Mars Society's finest hours, because in early 2005, President Bush announced the vision for space exploration, going back to the moon and onto Mars, and this time to stay. Great, right? Okay, and simultaneous with that, his NASA administrator, Sean O'Keefe, announced, well, and we're going to destroy the Hubble Space Telescope because it's too dangerous to go up and fix it. Yeah, we're going to the moon and Mars, but it's too dangerous to go to Hubble, so we're going to destroy it. Okay, and the Mars Society, actually uniquely among all the space advocacy organizations, except the astronomers, but said, no, we're not taking this deal. Okay, first of all, if you don't have the guts to go to Earth orbit to save Hubble, you're definitely not going to the moon and Mars. But beyond that, this is a crime against science. Okay, Hubble is the most productive scientific instrument in human history. Okay, and they were going to destroy it, and they were coming up with ridiculous excuses like, "Oh, we're not destroying it," even though they were attempting to put out a procurement to deorbit it. They weren't just going to not repair it; they were going to make sure that it was brought down. Okay. Okay. we're giving it, what is it? An honorable discharge is what the head of the NASA Space Directorate said at that time. And I countered in print, pointing out that, okay, here's this thing, it's $4 billion worth of the taxpayers' property, about as much as it costs to make an aircraft carrier. And if the captain of an aircraft carrier said, well, the ship developed a leak and I could have sent 7 volunteers below to fix it with a 98% chance of success, but we thought it was too risky, so we decided to abandon ship, he would not get an honorable discharge, okay? And so forth. And we turned that around. We ran O'Keefe out of his job, and the person who replaced him, Mike Griffin, said, oh no, we're going to save Hubble, and we did. Now, this situation is much more severe than that, okay, because this isn't just one program that is being destroyed, okay? So at the same time that they were abandoning Hubble, they were getting ready to send MRO, the Mars Reconnaissance Orbiter. We had just landed Spirit and Opportunity. We're building, beginning to build Curiosity and a bunch of other planetary missions. And so in this case, they're going after the whole program itself, not just one important part of it. And this can't be tolerated. Okay, now look, why should this matter? Okay, you know, say, well, okay, you're getting the moon with people on the moon and then humans to Mars. And what are you worried about these little rovers and things for? Okay, well, I'll get a little bit more to that. But first of all, I want to talk about how under the current situation, we're not getting the moon or Mars. Okay, okay, Artemis is a total mess. It is a total massive mess because the same irrationality that is allowing this destruction of the space science program is disorganizing any rational human program. Look at Artemis. They've got 5 primary flight elements, okay? The SLS Starship, the Orion, the Lunar Orbit Gateway, and the National Lander, and none of these things fit together, okay? Because none of them were designed as part of an overall system. They were each simply promoted as something pleasing to some constituency that wanted money. So each of these are not, this is not a purpose-driven program. This is a vendor-driven program, and it's totally chaotic, okay? Now, you could say, well, Starship can do it all, right? Because it doesn't need the rest of these things to do a complete lunar mission. Okay, and that is sort of true, except that if you do the Musk architecture, which is you send a Starship to low Earth orbit, and now you have to believe not just that Starship is going to work, which I do believe, but that it will achieve the performance metrics that are currently being advertised, which is a whole nother issue. Okay, but if you believe that it really could deliver 100 tons to Earth orbit, and it will weigh no more than 100 tons itself, then you have to launch 4 more tanker Starships to refuel the tanker in low Earth orbit to get it to the Gateway. And then you have to refuel it at Gateway with 3 more tankers, each of which require 4 more tankers to get them to the Gateway. Okay, so you end up with like 14 tankers to do 1 lunar mission. Okay, this is a wildly suboptimal mission architecture. And you now also have to believe that you can do these 14 launches within some limited amount of time. And, you know, it's a different universe. Now, so this isn't going to work. And then the National Lander, which uses hydrogen oxygen, is not compatible with the Starship, which uses methane oxygen. Now, if you had leadership at NASA, this technically could be repairable, okay? While no one can convince Musk to also build a smaller Starship, I have tried, I call it the Starboat. That's what is needed, something 1/5 to 1/10 the size of Starship that runs on methane oxygen. And you could then put a Starship in low lunar orbit and have it act as a tanker for a little Starboat that goes up and down. That would make sense. And you could use the same approach to Mars, okay? 2 sizes fits all. And so instead of landing the Starship on Mars and having to refuel it with 600 tons of domestically made methane oxygen, you'd only need 50 tons. That's for a direct flight from the surface of Mars back to Earth. You'd only need 50 tons to send the Starboat up to the orbiting Starship. And so you could have a 2 sizes fits all architecture, okay, but that would require leadership at NASA. However, the problem is bigger than that, okay? Because some people say, well, look, it doesn't matter if NASA is destroyed because Musk can do it all, okay? And this is simply not true. This is not true. First of all, to realize the Musk architecture requires a multi-megawatt nuclear reactor on the surface of Mars. Where is that going to come from? Okay, the space nuclear reactors use highly enriched uranium or plutonium. These are controlled substances. It's going to require government involvement. If you try to do it with solar energy, with the architecture that he's proposed, it requires 13 football fields of solar panels, and so forth, which is often not happening. So you need government cooperation to make this work. But there's a bigger issue, okay? Because you see, look, humans to Mars cannot be done as an Elon Musk hobby horse or a Donald Trump hobby horse. It has to be done as an American program. It has to be done with bipartisan support, or as soon as the fortunes of political war shift, it will be killed. Now, here's the thing. How do you get bipartisan support for this program? You make it not about Musk's desire to have a planet terminus on which a select group of scientists can go and be there to reconstruct human civilization after the Earth is destroyed. You know, this is his concept. He calls it his colony terminus after the one in Foundation. Or it can't be done to have Trump win his second Nobel Prize. It has to be done for purposes that are understandable by a broad part of the American electorate and political constellation, and that is science. Okay, if you mark this program with the brand of Cain by having it done by the same people who murdered the space science program, you're guaranteeing that it will be destroyed as soon as the fortunes of political warfare shift. Okay, Musk has defined himself in an extremely partisan fashion, and if this program is defined in this extremely partisan fashion, that will be its fate. On the other hand, if you said, instead of killing the space science program because we're doing this stuff, we're going to use this stuff to radically expand the potency of our space science program. That is, the first Starship landing on Mars, or Starboat, okay, instead of landing a Optimus Tesla mannequin for public relations purposes, it lands a robotic science expedition. You know, Musk says the Starship could land 100 tons on Mars. Let's give them 30. 30 tons is still a lot, because right now we can only land one, so 30 tons. What could we do with 30 tons of scientific payload landed on Mars? Instead of landing one rover, we could land 20. And instead of one little helicopter, we could have 20 medium-sized helicopters, each carrying 20 or 30 kilograms of scientific instruments. Okay, and we can have a well-instrumented science lab in the lander to which the rovers and helicopters bring back samples, and they can deploy light detection experiments and drillers and all sorts of things, and seismic networks, and everything that you could possibly want to do a science expedition to Mars that would be 2 orders of magnitude more potent than anything we've been able to do with the kind of science program that we've done up till now. So instead of making the human Mars program the murderer of the science program, we make it its enabler, its greatest friend. Okay, we can do, yes, that's what needs to be done. But if you're going to do that, instead of shutting down JPL and these other places that make things like Mars rovers and helicopters and such, you need to expand those capacities. All right? Because who's going to make the Mars rovers that would go on this expedition if you're shutting down that whole line of activity? So there is that. So now if you did that, then you turn so in other words, that's how you're exercising the Starship first to get it ready to send humans to Mars. And then you can send subsequent science expeditions, as well as expeditions which are deploying construction rovers and stuff to access the glaciers on Mars and melt water out of them and fill up the Starship on the surface of Mars with propellant made there using its tanks as your surface storage depot, and all the rest. This program evolves naturally from an expanded science program into a human program. And you see, if you do this, then you have the support of the Mars science community for this program. And the Mars science community is university-based, which is to say it's based in a social network that is the left of center and which has the ear of the Democratic Party. And then you have a program that has national support. And then instead of this program being a must-hobby horse to create the Harry Seldon terminus colony on Mars, it is a national program to once again astonish the world with what free people can do in science. Okay, and this is very important. Okay, because this is the larger issue. The highest ideal of contemporary Western civilization is freedom. And science is the child of freedom. Free inquiry, okay, is what produces science. Okay, the fruits of science is technology, and anybody can use that. But science itself, okay, comes from freedom. And I have to say that this administration, its attack on the space science program is coming in tandem with an attack on American science much more broadly. The National Science Foundation, the National Oceanic Administration, the Center for Disease Control, the National Institute of Health. Okay, and in fact, in some respects, some of the attacks on scientific medicine by this administration are more severe than what they're doing to NASA, because at least they don't actually have a NASA administrator, but whoever is sort of doing that has not yet, issued a denial that the moon exists or something. Okay, which is sort of the case with medicine. But so we're having an attack on science, and once again, okay, if you look at the Enlightenment, okay, the proof given for the desire to set reason free was that it produces science. Science is the poster child for the value of human freedom. Okay, it puts it in terms that are not abstract at all. It produces stuff that saves your child from dying of disease. It produces methods of navigating the sea that can get you from here to there, okay, and enable global trade. It can do all these things. This is what science can do. Science is magic that works, okay? And it's a product of freedom. And now, admittedly, space science is not all of science, but it is the greatest symbol of science in our age. It is the banner of science. It is for the scientific worldview what Gothic cathedrals were to the religious worldview of the Middle Ages. Those were represented concrete symbols of the value that those societies put on their highest ideals. Okay, of human salvation through the grace of Christ. Well, the NASA space science program has astounded the world with the things that it does. It is the images, Hubble, and the images from Hubble, and now from Webb, and taken of the outer planets and so forth by these various probes, and yes, from the surface of Mars. These are the Gothic cathedrals of our time. This is the banner of the scientific worldview. This is our flag, and they are burning our flag. That's what they're doing. They're burning our flag when they destroy this program, and it cannot be tolerated. So, to save not just the Humans to Mars program, but to reaffirm the highest ideals and the most productive ideals of our society, we need to repel this attack. Okay? And that is why the Mars Society in the coming period, and we're going to talk more about this, you'll hear about this from James, you'll hear about it at the banquet, okay, is going to be to mobilize, to contact Congress, to mobilize chapters in every district to go to speak to anybody with in Congress or the Senate or who can reach them and say, this must not happen. We can't let them burn our flag, and we're not going to let them burn our flag. Thank you. I'll take questions.
I was wondering, so you were talking at the beginning about how we have this huge problem with compatibility between the systems of Starship and NASA. Do you think as the space kind of sector shifts from government to private, do you think we'll have more problems like this or less problems like that with compatibility?
Well, the problem that we have here is this, okay? The entrepreneurial space sector was launched in a serious way, in part due to NASA fumbling, okay? That is, in the 1960s, when NASA was storming heaven and Apollo, not many people were looking for a private sector savior to step forward. But then as NASA in the following decades got people increasingly frustrated with not being able to continue to act as we had seen it act before, then people said, this has got to be done. Someone's got to step forward. And at first, there were a multitude of efforts in the 90s, and most of these were undercapitalized and failed. But finally, someone came along who wanted to do it, who had the capital and business smarts to do it. Of course, that was Musk, and other people got into it in other sectors. And this has taken off. But the problem is, you see, is that it's a good thing that we're getting extra actors into this game besides NASA. It's essential, actually. Okay, but nevertheless, there has to be a NASA. Look, it is not true. There are people who are going around saying that the problem is NASA, let's get rid of it and let the private sector do it all. Well, there's about 200 countries on this planet that don't have a national space program, okay? And almost none of them have any entrepreneurial space program either. If you're talking about sending probes to Mars or even the moon, it really needs a government customer. Now, these things can be implemented on behalf of the government customer much more efficiently by private enterprises. Especially if they are mission driven, the issue here is not to spend as much money on the program as you can and take as long as you can in order to distribute money to a district, but get it done as quickly and cheaply as possible in order to make a profit by saying we're going to do the job and here's what we're charging it, and then costing it less to yourself. And in aerospace, cost is people times time. So the faster you get something done, the more money you make, if that how this thing is constructed. Now, I mean, look, there's problems in this. Okay, I've published, Mars Direct diverged enormously from the NASA line in the 90-day report. And, I have argued that sample returns should be replaced with a much more diverse program of sending small and medium-sized missions to Mars, helicopters, rovers, life detection experiments to lots of places. Instead of doing one $10 billion mission, let's do $2,500 million missions. It makes a lot more sense. So NASA does need to be fixed, but in order to fix it, we got to save it. Okay, and if there is no, and Artemis, okay, is a failure on the part of NASA, because what happened with Artemis, okay, was they got excited about the progress that Starship was making. They said, okay, we want to be part of that. So they gave Musk his $2.9 billion contract to use the Starship as a lunar lander. And then the other team, the national team, Blue Origin, Lockheed Martin, yelled and screamed, he can't do that for $2.9 billion. And Musk's answer was, well, that's all I'm charging you. And so what's there to say? But then they yelled and screamed some more. And since they had influence, Congress basically forced NASA. They're going to hate you if you don't give them a contract. You better give them a contract. So they gave them a contract, but so NASA couldn't help that. But what they should have done at that point is said, okay, we're going to give you your contract, but this is what you need to build. Okay, you need to build a lander that is compatible with Starship. Instead of a hydrogen oxygen, we want it to be methane oxygen because that is compatible with Starship, and the Starship could then act as a tanker for you. And in other words, basically, they could have given them a contract to build Starboat. Okay, and that's more or less what NASA needs to do now. They have to basically say, look, sorry about that, but you want this contract, we got to have you build what we need. And management will say, okay. And that's what happened. But it's going to take leadership. And right now, there isn't even a NASA administrator. Okay. That is, I had hoped that, okay, Musk gave $200 million to get Trump elected. And supposedly they were going to give him the ring of power, the one ring to rule them all. And he can make all his dreams come true. But instead, he put them in power and they said, sorry, Musk, you're a chump. The chump has done his work. The chump may go. Thank you for your 200 million. Now get lost. Now and they got rid of Isaacman too. And then they didn't even. There's other people that could be a good NASA administrator who are Trump supporters. Okay, but they didn't even put any of them in. So we have a serious problem here. Yes, we need to demand that. Number one, that the murder of the space science program be reversed. And number two, that a competent NASA administrator be installed who can rectify the problems with NASA. Questions? Where was the person? Raise your hand. Yes. Well, things go beyond short and medium-term profit. Okay, so if we're talking about science missions to the Mars and the outer solar system, there really isn't a good business plan for that. Okay, but look, but there is a real purpose for doing that. Okay, here's a quote. Okay. We are the watchers on the walls of world freedom. Who said that? Anybody know? I'll give you a hint. He also said, a new ocean has opened and free men must sail it.
Kennedy.
John F. Kennedy, yes. Okay. And by the way, he didn't actually give that speech. That's the speech he would have given that evening in Dallas before he was killed. Okay. But the point here is Kennedy believed, and I believe, and I think most Americans believe, that this country is something that stands for more than its own interests. This country stands for a cause. It stands for the cause of world freedom and the things that freedom yields, which include science. And so America, okay, literally from its foundation, Benjamin Franklin, but especially in the post-war period, in the modern period, we have raised the banner of not just freedom, but of science, which is and we've done this, and we've astonished the world with what what freedom can do. Okay, and I was in Leningrad when we landed on the moon. Okay, because as a kid I was a chess player, and let me tell you, it made an impression. It made an impression, and it made probably more of an impression lots of other places. But this is what we got to do. And there are people right now, okay, who say America's the past, China's the future. They are efficient. They can coordinate everything. They have achieved a harmonious society by knowing what everybody does all the time, and all of that. And that's the future. And not this interesting but chaotic and failed experiment called America. And we need to refute that thesis. And yes, okay, we need to continue doing the kinds of great things that the space science program has done, and then follow that up by truly astonishing the world what free people can do by sending humans to Mars. Thank you.